per coin. Unfortunately, we don't have that anymore. Well, anyway, that's those days are past. So Bitcoin actually does sort of have a physical entity. Bitcoin does sort of have a physical presence, if you think of it that way. Where yeah, it does sort of exist on a physical plane because it is connected to your hard drive, where it's actually stored on your hard drive. Whereas your bank account, not so much. And plus, information on your bank account can technically be altered by people who work at the bank. So that raises some problems with security where if any old Joe Blow can alter your bank information at the bank, that's kind of a problem. Now, that doesn't mean that they will or they have, but it means that they can. And I don't really like to take that risk. So I keep as little as my money as possible in the bank. The rest of it's in cash, untraceable, all that good stuff. Plus, if I need to give somebody money for some reason, I can just hand it to them in cash instead of having to worry about, PayPal or Google Wallet or whatever. So there are quite a few benefits to cash over a bank account, just as there are benefits to cash over a Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, I actually tend to favor over the traditional banking system, which we use here in the United States and which is used around the world. Saudi Arabia has it right, actually, when it comes to their monetary system, where gold is actually accepted as currency in some places in Saudi Arabia, whereas it's not really here in the States. It's not like I could go to a gun shop, like any old gun shop, and say, here's an ounce of gold. I want a Glock 17 or a Glock 20, pardon me. Or here's several gold dollars. I want a G3, an H&K G3. Or here's several gold dollars or $1 gold. I want a Mosin Nagant. That wouldn't really happen. You might be able to strike that deal up with some local gun store where you know the people there, but 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be feasible. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like it to be true, as much as I'd like for you to be able to exchange gold dollars for firearms, not every gun store is going to allow that, especially Walmart, especially Cabela's, especially Bass Pro Shops. They're not really going to take favorably to you bringing in a satchel of gold in exchange for a weapon. They'll probably tell you to leave or tender actual currency, which I argue gold is. They argue it's not. There's a whole long debate we could get into, but we don't need to. The point is that the modern banking system is totally screwed up because we're exchanging numbers for objects. We actually are just exchanging numbers for objects. These numbers have no value. When you are buying something via online banking, or even when you're buying something with cash, you're really not exchanging much of anything. Like, think about it. What do you gain when you get a bank transfer in exchange for a product? Let's say you own a small business, right? And you use Square, where you swipe your card and you sign your name, and that's how you make the transaction. Well, that's cool, and that's so easy. Can't go wrong with that, right? Well, that's also not really great because what are you gonna do? I mean, what do you have now? You have numbers. That's all you've got. You've got numbers which have been added to an account. Now, in our society, those numbers mean a lot because those numbers can be exchanged for anything you could ever want. That's beneficial to people who have lots of those numbers, sure. But what do those numbers represent? I mean, what is that number? Tell me, if I have 1.00 in my bank account, $1 in my bank account, what is that? Okay, that's $1, right? That's $1, one paper note, which will be handed to me if I want to withdraw all the money in my bank account, where they say, here's your dollar. And I take my dollar, but now what do I have? I have a piece of paper. What does that piece of paper represent? Nothing really. It's just a piece of paper. I'm just holding a piece of paper and I say, this is worth something. Why? Why is it worth something? Because it has the full faith and credit of the United States government. Ooh, that means a lot, which is actually doesn't mean anything to me because I don't have any faith or put much credit towards the United States. So, ouch. Yeah, I don't really have much stock in our present money situation here in the United States. It's not that great, actually. And not just here, it's pretty much everywhere. Canada's that way. Mexico's that way. Every country is that way. Most countries are that way who are not signed up with or who are signed up, I should say, with the World Bank. There are very, very few countries who are signed up with the World Bank, which are signed up with the World Bank, by the way. Iran is one. Syria is another. And I think Iraq was one for a little while. And North Korea. Those are all countries which are not part of the world banking system. Any other country is part of the world banking system and has horrible, horrible laws on banking because the banking system is totally screwed up and it doesn't work and it's not beneficial to anyone except the people who run the banks, i.e. Federal Reserve and IMF. But anyway, So chargers are saying that crooked feds use Bitcoin as a license to steal. So yesterday, the Bitcoin world, according to The Verge, got some shocking news. Two undercover agents are being charged with a massive corruption scheme as part of their work investigating the Silk Road, which was the online drug marketplace on Deep Web, which is a website only accessible via Tor, the Tor browser, which can easily be downloaded. It's not like it's hard to get to. You just have to know what the address is and get the Tor browser, which can be had from torproject.org, I believe is the address. Anyway, just search for Tor browser in Google and it'll pop right up. I mean, it's not illegal to own. It's not a crime to own Tor browser. You can use it for totally legit purposes. Especially as a journalist, it's been very helpful to me accessing sites from, say, other countries to see what a website looks like if I access it from, Albania or whatever. So it actually is helpful. So while they were working to catch the Dread Pirate Roberts, who is the person who's alleged to be running Silk Road, they were also funneling thousands of Bitcoin into private accounts. You basically just stole money from a drug kingpin. Now, a lot of people may applaud that. Me, not so much, because you've actually just stolen money, which does actually belong to somebody. Yeah, I mean, shouldn't it be locked up as evidence or something and then later auctioned off, which is what they do? The affidavit is a remarkable journey through half a dozen different extortion schemes and confidence games played out in the background of one of the biggest investigations the Bitcoin world has ever seen. It's worth reading the entire thing if you have the time, but most nobody does. But even the short version is pretty shocking. The complaint names two undercover agents, Secret Service agent Sean Bridges and DEA agent Mark Force. Now, people might be asking, the question, what does the Secret Service have to do with Bitcoin? Well, actually, the Secret Service, believe it or not, was originally formed to ensure that banks, or rather that money was not being counterfeited. That's seriously what the Secret Service was originally intended to do, was to ensure that banknotes weren't being counterfeited, thus artificially inflating the economy, which the organized crime units back in the day, in the 20s and 30s, were definitely doing. They're printing their own money, which created huge amounts of inflation, which made people very mad. So the Secret Service was formed to try to stop that from happening. It didn't work. Not so much. Didn't really work, but they did shut down a few, say, printing presses. But I mean, inflation hasn't ended. That's the funny thing. Like, probably the inflation that was caused by the organized crime, the mobsters, probably is nothing compared to what happens today. Interestingly enough, like, think about it this way: in the 1930s, the dollar was actually worth a lot more than it is now. Like, that's not even a joke. Like, I'm serious. The US dollar was worth a lot more in the 1930s than it's worth right now. That's kind of shocking to think about in and of itself. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It's not like, oh man, the US dollar is so worthless, because look at how it was worth nothing then and it's worth even less now. I mean, you have to consider a lot of things, because the US dollar was actually backed by silver back in the 1930s. And it's not now. So it does make sense that it would be worth a lot less, but it's just a shocking fact when you tell people that the US dollar is worth a lot less now than it was during the Great Depression. And people freak out about that, but it's kind of funny, actually. So the Sean Bridges and DEA agent Mark Force are the two people who are accused of funneling millions of dollars into private Bitcoin accounts, i.e. wallets, which were never reported or turned over to the authorities. That's where the problem starts to come in, because if they're funneling it for investigative purposes, you can understand, where they say, we seized a bunch of this money, here it is as evidence. That's not what happened, though. Allegedly, they funneled this money for their own personal keeping. So the agents are running a number of schemes, according to these allegations, from selling information to outright extortion and theft. And they don't seem to have been at all worried about the repercussions. It's the kind of runaway law enforcement that the more paranoid dark web residents have been worried about for all this time, except now there's proof that it actually does happen. You see, most people want to be left alone. In fact, most everybody wants to be left alone. Think about it. What do I want to do when I go home? I want to chill out. I don't want to bother with stuff. I mean, I have work to do at my house too. But when I go home, I usually kick back and play a game or something, or read a book. Very rarely. I listen to music a lot. I just chill out. I don't want to be bothered. Nobody wants to be bothered when they're in their house. Nobody wants to be bothered when they're at work. People just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone, man. And that's kind of what is going on here with this whole, deep web drug marketplace thing, where these people just want to be left alone. They want to get out of the whole drug dealing thing in the outside world, where it's really just people who have drugs who are selling drugs to other people who want drugs. So it's people who are already using, who are buying these drugs. It's not like they're being pushers on the street. So you can sort of see why it's really not a huge deal. But because drugs are illegal here in the United States, there's class one, class two, class three, class four. There's all different classes of drugs. There's marijuana is highly illegal in a lot of states still. Cocaine, of course, is highly illegal. But with Silk Road, you could buy it online and have it shipped straight to your door from one person to another. It's a private sale. So it's basically it's the equivalent of like if you came over and I knew you and I knew you were holding and I said, hey, can you spare some? Here's $5, and you handed it to me. It's the exact same thing except it's being shipped to you over the mail. That's what Silk Road was. It was domestic shipping. I mean, there's lots of videos on buying drugs on Silk Road. Now, Silk Road is no longer there, but it did work for a long time until it got busted by the feds, mostly because a lot of people knew about it. I never used it personally. I never had any use to. I don't use, but let's say I know of people who have, and it was pretty dang convenient, not gonna lie. Well, observers who are still sorting through the legal implications of the charges, Force and Bridges didn't testify at the Albright trial, which is interesting because they did a lot of work to help to indict him. But their work still seems to have been focused on other charges like the Maryland contract killing that still has not gone to court. Now, Ross Albright is the person who's alleged to be Dread Pirate Roberts. In fact, he's been thrown in jail for being Dread Pirate Roberts. Whether or not he is or not, we don't know for sure, but he's been convicted as being him. So he has, for some reason, not seen Bridges or the other guy, Force, on the stand, interestingly enough. So still, Bridges' name turns up a lot in the Bitcoin-related court documents, including a seizure warrant for Mt. Gox's Dwolla account. And Albright's lawyer has already called for a new trial based on the government's failure to reveal the corruption cases early enough. So could it have been that the government was trying to hold back on these corruption cases until the Ross Albright trial came to an end? Now, again, Ross Albright is the person who is alleged to be the Dread Pirate Roberts who ran the Silk Road drug dealing website. Now, when I say drug dealing website, I don't mean a drug pushing website. I don't mean like the website itself was responsible for sale of drugs. What I do mean is the website was sort of a marketplace. It's more of a drug marketplace. A lot of people in MSM, mainstream media, said it was a drug dealing site. And I mean, you can sort of see it that way, but it's not like the guy next to 7-Eleven who tries to sell you dime babs of Coke. I mean, that's not really how it was. It was more like you bought it online because you wanted it. It's not like there's a guy standing outside the street going, hey, man, you want some? It wasn't that way. But what's even more remarkable is how familiar the two agents' alleged crimes are to anyone who's familiar with the dark web. Again, they keep calling it dark web. I don't know why. I think to make it sound more scary than it actually is, it's deep web. It's deep web. It's always been deep web. I don't know why they keep calling it dark net, dark web, whatever. It's a media thing to make it sound scarier than it actually is. Just call it what it is. It's deep web. That's what everyone's been calling it. Deep web is an internet that exists outside of the regular internet, or rather the regular World Wide Web. It's only accessible through the Tor web browser. So if you want to get on deep web, you have to use it. You have to use the Tor web browser. I've been using deep web for a long, long time. Probably 5 or 6 years now, which is funny considering how old I am, which is not very. 5 or 6 years is a quarter of my life, to put that into perspective. So yeah, I'm not very old at all. But yeah, I've been using deep web for forever. It's just been a thing that I've browsed for a long time. There's some really horrible, awful stuff on deep web, but there's some really horrible, awful stuff on regular web too. You just have to know how to find it, and most people don't. Well, anyway, the biggest example of this government corruption is a major theft that took more than 20,000 bitcoins from the Silk Road on January 25th of 2013. Monday's affidavit makes a strong case that the real culprit was Sean Bridges, who was working for the Baltimore Silk Road Task Force at the time. Bridges had high-level access to Silk Road thanks to an informant who had turned over his administrator passwords to the task force. That's more than $5 million, even at today's rates, but outside of the Bitcoin company, or rather community, few people raised an eyebrow at the heist. Bitcoin services see thefts like this all the time, so the agents were able to keep the massive haul mostly under the radar, which is kind of funny about Bitcoin because money does get stolen from Bitcoin all the time. So like they say, a big theft like this didn't really raise any eyebrows, funnily enough. So a similar dynamic was at work when Force shook down payment services. In one of the most blatant thefts, Force ordered the Bitcoin exchange CoinMKT to freeze an individual customer's account containing $300,000, only to transfer those funds to his own personal account. It would be difficult to pull this off at a more established bank. There would be more legal muscle required and more extensive documentation, but Bitcoin services are more accustomed to legal gray areas. And after a few high-profile money laundering cases, many are eager to stay on the authorities' good side. So basically they said, we're the FBI. You better do what we say or else we'll throw you in jail for money laundering or some other such nonsense. So they complied. In both of these cases, the agents were playing off long-standing weaknesses in the Bitcoin ecosystem that criminals have been exploiting for years. In other cases, they simply exploited the norms of the community. Force's most egregious move was selling information about the investigation directly to Albright. For $100,000, he allegedly gave Albright the name that Mt. Gox founder Mark Karpeles had given to investigators looking for the real Dread Pirate Roberts, a turn of events that Force seems to have completely fabricated. So it's really, really bizarre, this whole Bitcoin case, because it seems like the feds were just totally corrupt in this whole Bitcoin scandal. It's really amazing that more news sources aren't carrying this, possibly because there's a lot of technical knowledge and lingo that goes into it. But, it seems like a lot of the more established media outlets are afraid to make the feds look bad, which is kind of funny because there's all these stories about, the Secret Service being totally bad at their jobs. There's all these stories about the FBI, eating their feet all the time. There's stories about the ATF because of a typo almost banning a certain type of ammunition. All these different things. And nobody seems to want to point these things out in, say, cable news or on mainstream news or whatever. That's not to toot my own horn. That's just to point out how freaking horrible at news these guys are. Honestly, because if I can find out about this stuff, and I'm just some guy, right? If I can find out about this stuff and report on it as best I can, why can't these guys in the news? Why are they so bad at their jobs? It's actually really weird. Like, the guys who work in the FBI are consistently really bad at investigating. People who work in the Secret Service are systematically, continually really bad at protecting the president and other people. And people who work in the ATF are consistently bad at documenting what types of weapons are what type of ammunition is what. So really, the best objective is to just point and laugh, because these guys are a joke, man. These guys do not know what they're doing. They're totally inept. And honestly, they're horrible, horrible at their jobs.
This is a mob mode. This is a mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble, just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better than new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Hot News Talk Radio, 910, 1190, and 1240 AM.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240. Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. The governor of Arkansas calling for changes to a religious objection bill some criticize as anti-gay.
This is a bill that in ordinary times would not be controversial. But these are not ordinary times.
Governor Asa Hutchinson, a day after his Indiana counterpart, urged lawmakers to send a bill to his desk to clarify the intent of Indiana's new religious objections law. A new report out on homegrown terror.
Group tracking terror plots says since 9/11, there have been at least 64 serious attempts to carry out attacks here on American soil. The latest being 2 men. It's a frightening plan to kill 150 National Guard members. It was all stopped by the FBI last week. According to the study, homegrown terrorists were behind 53 of the 64 plots.
Fox News' Jackie Ibanez. Fox News. We report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
We're going for the glitch core sound, I guess. What the heck? Wow, okay. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell, the show. We talk about technology and more. Wow. So the president... I'm sorry. The president has signed an order that allows for sanctions over cyber attacks. So I'm kind of amazed that this has not happened already, actually. Cyber attacks are kind of a serious thing. So, I mean, I actually am not a huge fan of sanctions, is the thing. Okay, what happens when you sanction a country? Think about it. What happens? Well, usually there's some sort of economic sanction where it's like, we're not going to buy this or that. Sanctions can sometimes double basically as embargoes. So, okay, for instance, in the 1990s, there was this embargo placed against China by Bill Clinton, which meant that you could not buy weapons from China anymore. So that meant very affordable weapons from Norinco were suddenly totally illegal to own, which is very annoying because Norinco actually surprisingly makes very good guns, and you can buy them in Canada for like pennies on the dollar compared to how much they cost here. It's stupid, but sanctions tend to be stupid. Here's what happens when you press sanctions against a country. It means people who are, say, chartered with the UN or are signing some sort of treaty, they won't sell this or that to this particular country. So who does this hurt? Well, the people, actually. Because think about it. Let's say we press sanctions against North Korea where nobody's going to sell rice to North Korea anymore, or nobody's going to sell wheat to North Korea anymore, or nobody's going to sell whatever necessary thing to North Korea. Now, this doesn't actually hurt Kim Jong-un or any of the people in his posse because Kim Jong-un can just get his stuff somewhere else. He can seriously just fly to China and get it. Or he could actually just order it from like Russia or order it from Nepal or whatever. It wouldn't be that hard for him to just get the stuff, or some underground tunnel going from North Korea to South Korea. You know, this would not hurt Kim Jong-un or his posse. Who it does hurt is the people. So economic sanctions in particular are not something I'm a huge fan of. In fact, sanctions in general are not something I'm a huge fan of. Now, we have, unfortunately, certain deals here in the United States where we sell weapons to different countries. We sell weapons to our NATO allies, whatever that means. It's the North Atlantic Trade Organization. It's really ridiculous. Or North Atlantic Treaty Organization or something like that. I can never remember what the T stands for. Basically, we sell a bunch of weapons to a bunch of different countries. They buy weapons from us. It's stupid because they could just manufacture their own weapons, but they won't because they can buy it from us on the cheap, whereas we cannot buy those weapons half the time because they're super expensive. Well, what if we just stopped selling weapons to, say, Germany? Germany would get kind of ticked. What if we sold or stopped selling weapons to, say, Ukraine, where they're trying to have their little rebellion over in Ukraine and they stop getting weapons and military aid from us? They would start whining. Well, that's sort of the okay sort of sanction in my view. Like, just stop selling weapons to people. It's a bad idea. Stop giving missiles to people in the Middle East. Stop giving nuclear bombs to people in South Africa. Stop giving nuclear devices to NATO people. It's just a bad idea. It's never going to end up well. Like, wow, let's give a bunch of weapons to megalomaniacs who are totally insane and expect that they won't do anything bad with them. Oh, okay. Like, that's seriously what we're doing. But anyway, the president has signed an order allowing sanctions over cyber attacks. So President Obama has signed an executive order paving the way for sanctions against groups which carry out digital attacks on the United States. The news was reported actually by the Washington Post last night and officially announced this morning in a press release. The president said, "I'm for the first time authorizing targeted sanctions against individuals or entities whose actions in cyberspace result in significant threats to national security, foreign policy, or economic health or financial stability of the United States." Obama said, "From now on, we have the power to freeze their assets, make it harder for them to do business with U.S. companies, and limit their ability to profit from their misdeeds." Well, I'm not sure where we claim this jurisdiction, actually. If we're freezing their assets in U.S. banks, okay, I can sort of understand that. But what if Wells Fargo just said no? Like, yeah, I'm not going to let you come in here. Sorry. Or what if, Goldman Sachs said, yeah, I'm not going to let you freeze my assets. That's not going to happen. Or, all these there's so many different scenarios where this could just go horribly wrong. But does it really matter? Actually, no, not really. That's kind of the funny thing. You see, people get riled up about these national issues. People get very, very riled up about some executive order that the president has signed or some bill that Congress has passed, when really, what does it do? I mean, seriously, what does it do to you? What does it do to me? Not much, 90% of the time. It really doesn't do a whole lot of anything. Where, let's say there's some sort of ban against a particular type of weapon. Let's say there's a particular type of, well, let's just go the full on. Let's say they've banned the AR-15, which is a common rifle. Lots of people have an AR-15, either carbine style or full on rifle style or whatever. People own AR-15s all over the country. Very, very popular weapon. Mil-spec rifle. Former military people like it because they're familiar with the platform. People who have never joined the military like it because it looks cool. It's just a nice, dependable, reliable rifle. Lots of people want one. I prefer the AK-47 myself, but that's just me. It's nothing wrong with an AR-15. I just like AK-47s better because that's just me. But what if the ATF, for instance, said, yeah, you can't buy AR-15s anymore and you have to hand them over? What would happen? Well, honestly, most people probably wouldn't hand theirs over. Now, you might have some statist apologists who might hand theirs over, and there would be not much of an uproar about it. But 9 times out of 10, the ATF actually doesn't know who owns what. That's the funny thing. You see, in the state of Georgia, we don't have to register our guns. We actually don't. You don't have to register your guns in Georgia. There's no handgun registry. There's no long gun registry. So the feds don't know who owns what. And that's kind of a cool thing. But what if you manufacture your own weapon? So there's no record of you having bought an AR-15 80% lower. So what can they do, really? See, that's the thing. People have this idea that the federal entities, all 50 of them, all 50,000 million of all these different federal entities are just the most omnipotent thing ever, and they can never do any wrong. Or if they do wrong, then they're never going to be held accountable for it. And if you ever question them, they'll send people over to harass you. When in actuality, the federal entities are actually not very good at doing their jobs, for one. And going beyond that, they really can't see beyond their own nose half the time. I mean, these guys are not very smart. They're not very clever. And they're not very good at doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we're supposed to be afraid of these people? Like, I'm supposed to be afraid of this entity which can barely tie its own shoes. It's like you're at school, walking down the hallway, and there's the class nerdy kid. I was that kid. There's the class nerdy kid. He's got the glasses with the tape rolled around the center of it, and he's got the books, and he's got the shoes which are untied and everything. And as you're walking down the hall, your friend pulls you aside and says, "Hey, watch out for that guy. That guy is messed up. That guy will mess you up. Watch out for him because he's a big problem. That guy will screw you up. So be careful." When in actuality, all he does is he knows how to tie words together and he talks big, and that's about as far as it goes. It's not to be afraid of. This guy's nothing to be afraid of. It's the same with the federal government. The federal government barely ties his own shoes, man. They're totally inept at everything they do. Like, for instance, the economy. We're supposed to trust the government to run the economy. They can't do it. We're supposed to trust the government to to run the Social Security system. Guess what? They can't do it. They're bad at it. They're supposed to trust the government to index all the weapons sold in the United States. Guess what? They can't do it because they're bad at it. They're supposed to trust the government to do drug enforcement. There's a whole agency dedicated to it, the Drug Enforcement Agency. Guess what? I can walk down the street and buy crack right now. They're bad at their jobs. That's all there is to it. They're horrible at their jobs, and I'm supposed to be afraid of that entity? Yeah, right. Come on. These guys are so bad at their jobs. There's nothing to be afraid of here. It's just like it's the mouse that roared, you know? It's this little mouse, but it's got a big voice, so we all need to be scared. There's nothing to be afraid of here. It's this little entity, big deal. If we ignore it, it'll go away, actually. It's like there's actually sort of a theory that was brought up by David Toulis of Nuganomics.com. He brought up this theory on what could happen to cause total economic collapse. And it's very, very interesting. What he theorizes is, what if everyone went to the bank and said, I want to take out $200, not even wipe my account clean. I just want to take out $200. What would happen? Well, first of all, the bank does not have that much money in their vaults. And trust me, the bank usually doesn't carry more than like $5 million or something like that in their bank vault. It's not a whole lot of cash which they carry in their bank vault. It's really not. You see the big armored trucks driving around? Those are the trucks which probably have just about as much money as a bank does in their vault. Bank theft is not really something that's a big deal. It's not like banks have a huge amount of gold in them anymore. So really all you get from the bank anyway is a bunch of worthless paper if you robbed one. But let's say you go to the bank and you say, I want to take $200, and you get your friend to come over to the bank and you say, he wants to take $200 too. And all the dudes in your neighborhood come over to the bank and say, we all want to take out $200. Guess what? They don't have that money. They don't have anywhere close to that amount of money. They don't have anywhere close to a fraction of that amount of money. So what would they do? They'd say, well, sir, we can put you on a list to get your money out. And you say, no, I want my money right now. I need this money to pay my bills because my landlord doesn't take checks. I need this money right now. Well, they freak out. They say, okay, we need to put you on a list right now. And you say, I'm not leaving until I get my money. This is my money. I'm not leaving. So they call the cops. Okay, what are the cops going to do? Well, sir, we need you to step out of the building because they can't give you your cash. Okay, so that's one neighborhood. What if everyone in all these different neighborhoods all throughout the United States, or even just in the state of Georgia or state of Tennessee or Alabama or South Carolina, North Carolina, whatever, they all went to their banks and said, yeah, we need to take out $200 right now. Oh, man, that would be economic collapse right there. Not some sort of digital attack by the Chinese. That's economic collapse. That's what the banks are afraid of, is everybody suddenly saying, I want cash. That's what they're afraid of, man, because that's the big deal right there. Now, I wish I could say that that idea is original to me, but it's not. David Toulis of Nuganomics.com is the person who thought of that. Totally genius. I wish more people would try to pull that off. But something else that's kind of funny is you can ask for $50 at banks. You can still do that too. And Hot News Talk Radio, we have a call. What's going on, caller?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Couple of problems with your theory.
Okay.
Banks only keep a few $1,000s on hand. Typically, if you need 20 or 30,000, they have to order it, and they'll bring it in that Thursday, I believe, or Tuesday, twice a week. So you can't typically get more than really 5,000 to 10,000 cash out. They don't keep that much cash on hand. I doubt that they even have $50,000, the average bank, on hand. Because remember, most transactions, 95% a day, are non-cash transactions.
Right.
So let's assume that people went and asked for $200 per bank. It's not your money anyway. That's number one. The second you make a deposit into one of those institutions, read the fine print. It's not yours, it's theirs. And all you're doing is swapping units of purchasing power for intangible objects of thought. The paper itself is not considered the money as a matter of law. It's the monetized debt on the computer system that is. And you're not going to collapse a system that uses monetized debt because they just create more numbers. The idea that the paper will collapse the system if you take more of it, the notion that could happen is not true because they'll just print more of it. Most of the circulation, 95% of the day, is non-paper. People love using their cards. Get a cup of coffee. You'll see. Typically, the woman in front of you is swiping her card for a 95-cent cup of coffee.
That's true.
The other day, I bought a coffee. I think it was $1.05 or $1.10, and the person before me bought one for like $1.10, and she used her card. And she said, well, where's your card? I'm like, I'm giving you cash. I said, people use cards for $1 coffee? She goes, most of them.
That's true, though, because I do that. That's the sad thing is I will swipe my card for something that's like 50 cents. I'm an idiot, I guess.
You do, too, right?
Yeah, of course. I hate carrying around
Because
cash.
because it's convenient.
Exactly, yeah.
That's convenient. It's like this issue of homos believing they can compel someone to make a cake for them. They can't. And the idea that because money's involved, their commercial marketplace is involved, since you're dealing with money, that you're required to do that is ridiculous. And I ultimately believe this is God saying you're putting dollars over my commandments, because he considered homosexuality an abomination. So that comes from the Bible. And any one of these pigs out there that think otherwise are just that. No one can compel you to do anything against your conscience, ever. Even if some lunatics in three-piece suits that have degrees and they're in Washington or in Nashville and put pen to paper saying you're required to do or not do something, you are never required to do anything that violates your conscience, whether it's making a cake, selling someone a shoe, or serving them. That's my thought. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So, new theory. To collapse the system, what you have to do is to just not open a bank account. No, kidding. So the only way, if this is in fact true, the only way that a collapse of the banking system could happen is if suddenly there was a digital run on the bank or something. I'm not sure what would happen, because he's right. All they do is just put in more numbers. And that really further illustrates how bad the system is, where all of our money, or like 90-something% of our money, is just numbers on a computer screen, numbers held in some server somewhere. It doesn't mean anything other than just that's a number. Let me transfer some numbers into your account. I'll transfer some bits. Really, what we should call it is bit money. Well, actually, wait, there is a thing already called Bitcoin, but it's 1 unit on a computer screen represents 1 bit. So say that there's a bit. That's really all they're exchanging is 1 bit. What's a bit worth? Not much. I mean, a bit, I wouldn't give you a cent, 1 penny for a bit. That's worth nothing. I wouldn't give you a penny for a 500 megabyte flash drive. Again, that's nothing. So it's funny how we're exchanging and we hold such high value to something which is really worth absolutely nothing, other than just the fact that they tell you it's worth something. It's insane. It's the definition of insanity, really, because we keep doing the same system repeatedly all over the world, expecting it to work every single time, when each and every time it's proven to not actually function properly. It's crazy. It actually is literally crazy. Or rather, it's literally insane. So that's a very large issue which has gone unaddressed mostly in the media, I guess. And I don't like to talk about the media, actually. That's the funny thing. A lot of news hosts, and I won't name them because I don't really care that much, but a lot of news hosts love to do this thing where they complain about the mainstream media. And they talk about how bad the mainstream media is and all this stuff. But, like, what is the mainstream media anyway? Like, I don't see how Fox can say that they're not mainstream media, because they're the #1 watched cable news show, cable news channel. They're #1. How can they say that's not mainstream? That's like if I said Star Wars is really not a mainstream movie because it wasn't the highest grossing film ever. Like, what are you saying? That's crazy. Star Wars is definitely a mainstream film. Or, it's all these different examples. Gone with the Wind, by the way, is the highest grossing film adjusted for inflation. It made several $billion. But it's just like, it makes no sense whatsoever. So you've been duped into thinking that you're being subversive, I guess. A lot of people are very much into that idea, too, that I'm doing something different than other people. If I'm doing something that nobody else does, I feel good about myself because I'm thinking, wow, I'm a unique person. So I think a lot of people feel that way about watching, say, Fox, where they say, man, I'm being subversive because liberals get mad when I watch this, and conservatives will sort of give me an attaboy when I watch it, even though no new ideas are being presented here, and it's just a bunch of spin, and that's coming from somebody who might be considered conservative by some people. So yeah, not a huge fan, actually. But yeah, anyway, it's just ridiculous. Well, some breaking news now that I'm trying to get to off the coast of Mexico, looking like a fire is now blazing off the coast of Mexico, where a fire on an oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico has 1 person dead and multiple injuries. So fire broke out on an oil platform belonging to Mexico's state Pemex petroleum giant in the Gulf of Mexico, leading to the evacuation of about 300 workers. According to the company, at least one person has died and 16 have been injured so far. So Pemex said on Twitter that the fire was the Abcatun Permanente platform. I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry. In the oil-rich Campeche Bay, which broke out overnight, and 8 firefighting boats were tackling the blaze. The oil giant said in a statement that at least one person, a contractor, has been killed, 16 have been injured in the blaze, and 2 of them are in serious condition. However, earlier, a spokesperson for emergency services in Ciudad del Carmen said that at least 45 people were injured. So not sure, but there was an oil platform fire just today, actually, as of a few hours ago. So that's breaking news now. It's just come out. So according to RT, Facebook has broken European Union laws, according to some, by tracking all visitors, even non-users, according to reports. So even if you've opted out of the tracking option in Facebook or don't have an account at all, the company is still watching your web movements through the use of social plugins, thereby breaking European Union laws, says a report by the Belgian Privacy Commission. So a report was commissioned by the BPC that has discovered that Facebook tracks everyone, even logged out users or people who don't have an account at all, primarily through the use of cookies and the like button, which is found on more than 13 million websites worldwide. According to European Union law, websites must receive a user's permission before placing any cookies on their computers. A cookie, by the way, is sort of a internet version of a tracker, basically, where information is associated with your computer via an IP address, and there's a little bit of information that's stored on your computer that relates to this particular website. So you log in and it'll recognize you as you. That's why if you click on Remember Me when you log into a website, it remembers you because you've stored the password information on your computer when you log in. It's pretty simple, actually. Well, by default, Facebook installs tracking cookies, which are tiny files containing user settings and previous activity, which then is logged into the domain name, so then they know who you are when you log in. Pretty simple. However, as the report found, non-users or those who opted out, Facebook still installed a special cookie called DATR, D-A-T-R, which still contains a unique identifier and thus could be used to track a user during every visit to a website containing the Facebook like button. So this is probably done for marketing reasons. In fact, it's almost certainly done for marketing reasons. But Facebook disputed the conclusions of the report, claiming that it contains factual inaccuracies, according to an emailed statement to The Guardian. Authors have never contacted us nor sought to clarify any assumptions upon which the report is based, the statement said. Facebook allegedly explained in detail inaccuracies in the earlier draft report after it was published directly to the Belgian DPA. Again, that's the Department for Privacy. The Silicon Valley giant even offered to meet the authors of the report to explain why their conclusions were incorrect. So Facebook seems to be taking pretty large steps to convince these people that they are wrong about their assumptions about Facebook. Now, are they? Well, from my analysis, I would say, yeah, they are partially incorrect because, yeah, cookies are placed on your computer, but that happens no matter where you go. I mean, really, that happens no matter where you go. Most websites use cookies these days. Again, cookies are just little bits of information that websites store on your computer. Oh, keep in mind, what happens when you visit a website is you go to suchandsuch.com and you actually download the HTML information. You download all the information associated with that website straight to your computer. It's not like it's some window to some server. No, you have downloaded that web page to your computer. So you are storing website information, and by that definition, they are storing information on your computer. There's no way around it. And that's just how the internet works. So if the European Union wants to change things about the internet, the people on these commissions are going to have a lot of work to do. They'll basically have to change how the internet works to comply with European Union law. And that's not going to happen. The European Union either needs to catch up on the internet and how it works, or the folks in the European Union need to just step off, because that's probably the best course of action. For some odd reason, the folks in the European Union commissions and all the various different agencies within, they seem to want to control the internet for some odd reason and mold it to their will, where I can't say that we don't do the same thing, because we do. I mean, look at net neutrality, but it seems like the internet really shouldn't have anything to do with any state whatsoever. The internet isn't a national thing. The internet is not owned by any nationality. It's owned by companies, which companies tend to not claim any sort of nationality unless it's like, Bank of America, which is very much an American company. But Facebook, I don't really think of as an American company. It's just a company which operates and happens to be residing within the United States. But anyway, Nuganomics.com with David Toulis is coming up in just a few seconds right here on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 954-9591. That's 954-9591. And visit Dr. Ross at 7405 Shaliford Road, Suite 320. Ross Chiropractic, helping your body heal itself. Because when your spine's in line, you will feel fine. Call 954-9591. That's 954-9591 for Ross Chiropractic.
Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. on Hot News Talk Radio, join Real Estate U for an hour of information, guests, and new ideas about the dynamic Chattanooga real estate investment market. Real Estate U every Tuesday at 11 a.m. here on Hot News Talk Radio.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
Have you ever thought about starting your own business? Trying to figure out which one may be right for you is a very daunting task. My name is Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source, and I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that are a right fit for you and the economy that we live in and that are right for the greater Chattanooga area, both demographically and competitively. If you would just like to learn more about the opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My phone number is 423-875-5621. 423-875-5621.
Pure, honest, fair, and respect. Just some words that come to mind when you think about how you want to be treated. And that's how you're treated at Rivermont Pure. Rivermont Pure in Rivermont, Chattanooga. Serving your vehicle needs for over 30 years.
Now that's a long time.
Owner-operators Charlie and Tommy always put your needs first. Yeah, go ahead. Get an estimate from one of those big guy impersonal car repair chains.
No way.
Then bring it to Tommy and Charlie at Rivermont Pure. Chances are they'll beat their price.